In a two-story white colonial house along Maple Street in the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio, Emily Harrison was drinking her morning coffee while gazing at the autumn foliage in her garden. Her life appeared perfect on the surface. Her husband Michael, in their 12th year of marriage, ran a local construction company and had just recently landed a major shopping center construction project. Emily herself had started working part-time as a librarian at the local public library this year, taking a new step forward from her long life as a stay-at-home wife. Michael was an impressive man with a sturdy build and a friendly smile. The two had started dating in high school and married right after college graduation. Michael's construction company, Harrison Construction, was a small company he had inherited from his father, but through his efforts and the trust he had built locally, it had grown into a mid-sized company with 25 employees. They had not been blessed with children, but the two seemed to support each other and live a peaceful married life. One of the most precious people in Emily's life was her sister Jessica. Jessica worked as a real estate agent and was known locally as a skilled agent with a reputation for her bright personality and sales skills. However, 3 years ago, Jessica's life changed dramatically. It was her divorce from her banker husband Robert. Robert Smith was a serious man who worked as a loan officer at the local First National Bank. Jessica and Robert had an 8-year-old son named Ethan. Regarding the reason for the divorce, Jessica was reluctant to speak in detail, but she explained that differences in values and differences in thinking about each other's future were the main causes. Currently, Ethan lived with Jessica, but they had a joint custody arrangement where he spent weekends with his father Robert. The bond between the sisters deepened even more after the divorce. Every Sunday morning, the two had made it a habit to eat together at the popular local cafe, Sunnyside Brunch. This time was a precious moment to report to each other about recent developments, consult about worries, and sometimes reminisce about old times. Emily respected Jessica's brightness and positive attitude, and Jessica also envied her sister's kindness and stable life. However, recently, subtle changes had begun to appear in Jessica's demeanor. Behind her usual bright smile, shadows of fatigue and anxiety had begun to show. The intensifying competition in the real estate market, the responsibilities of being a single mother, and above all, the economic burden seemed to be troubling her. Supporting the tuition for the private elementary school Ethan attended, the costs of his extracurricular activities, and her own living expenses alone was certainly not easy. Meanwhile, Emily and Michael's life seemed to be going smoothly. Michael's company was riding the wave of regional development, landing one major project after another. The two sometimes felt lonely about not having children, but because of that, they could focus on each other and had time to deepen their bond as a couple. Emily's work at the library was also fulfilling, and in an environment where her lifelong love of reading could be utilized, she was finding new life goals. From the neighbor's perspective, the Harrisons were an ideal couple. Michael also served as a director of the local Chamber of Commerce, and Emily actively participated in volunteer activities at the library. The two had a good reputation in the community and were respected by many people. On the last Sunday of October, Sunnyside Brunch was decorated with autumn decorations. Orange pumpkins and colorful fallen leaves warmly decorated the interior, and regular customers were enjoying the change of seasons. Emily was waiting for Jessica at their usual table by the window. Outside, the wind was starting to pick up, and leaves from the street trees were dancing and scattering. When Jessica arrived, Emily immediately noticed her sister's tired expression. She had her usual bright smile, but the dark circles under her eyes and her slightly gaunt cheeks told the story of the heavy burden she was carrying. "You look tired, Jessie. How was this week?" Emily called out gently. "So," Jessica said while sitting down, ordering her usual French toast. "But to be honest, things are a bit rough."
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
After the waitress left, Jessica sighed. "I got a call from Ethan's school. They said tuition is going up starting next year. $3,000 more per year. Emily showed a surprised expression. That's a big burden. It is. And on top of that, Ethan wants to join the soccer club. It's $150 a month. Uniforms and equipment cost extra. Jessica continued while adding sugar to her coffee. As his mother, I want to fulfill my son's wishes, but realistically speaking, it's tough. Isn't the real estate work going well? Jessica gave a bitter smile. On the surface, yes. But lately the competition has been fierce, and commission rates are dropping too. Big real estate companies are entering the market one after another, and we individual agents are struggling. The French toast was brought over. Jessica took a bite and then brought up an even heavier topic. Actually, there's another problem. Car repair costs. Your car. What happened? Last week, there was a strange noise coming from the engine, so I took it in for repair and they told me it would cost $500. But I can't let it affect my work, so I paid with my credit card. Jessica's voice gradually became smaller. Honestly, my credit card balance is almost at its limit. Emily looked at her sister with concern. Jessie, why didn't you talk to me about this sooner? I didn't want to worry you, sis. And I thought I could handle it myself, Jessica answered, almost on the verge of tears. But reality wasn't so sweet. Silence flowed between the two. Emily was beginning to understand the seriousness of her sister's situation. The sight of Jessica fighting economic hardship while raising her son as a single mother pained Emily's heart. What about child support from Robert? Emily asked carefully. $400 a month. Legally, that's considered sufficient, but considering Ethan's actual expenses, it's nowhere near enough. Jessica wiped her eyes with a napkin. Robert is also a banker, so he's not exactly wealthy either, and I can't expect more than this. Emily took her sister's hand. Jessie, if there's anything we can do to help, don't hesitate to ask. Michael's company has been doing well lately, and I've started working at the library too. Sis, thank you so much. But I'm an adult now, so I need to solve my own problems myself. Jessica tried to smile, but that smile was filled with sadness. We're family, so it's natural for us to help each other, Emily said firmly. At least rely on us in emergencies. Jessica looked at her sister with gratitude. You're really blessed, sis. Michael is kind and successful, and you seem fulfilled with your new job too. We have our share of struggles too, Emily answered modestly. But you don't have financial worries, do you? You don't have to stay awake at night thinking about bills. A hint of envy mixed into Jessica's voice. Sometimes I wonder why I'm the only one who has to go through such a hard time. Emily tried to understand her sister's feelings. The divorce wasn't an easy decision, was it? Of course not. But I knew that staying with Robert wouldn't make me happy, Jessica answered while gazing into the distance. He was a good man, but we were fundamentally different people. Our values, our dreams for the future, everything was different. In what specific ways? Jessica hesitated a little before answering. Robert was someone who sought stability. Working at the same bank for life, living in the same house forever, taking family vacations to the same place every year. That kind of life was his ideal. That doesn't sound like a bad thing. You're right. But I was different. I wanted more adventure, I wanted to try new things. Even the real estate work, I didn't start it just to get a stable income, but because I thought it was meaningful work that involved being part of important moments in people's lives. Emily nodded. So that's when you decided on divorce? Yes. But when I actually started living on my own, reality was much harsher. Jessica gave a bitter smile. To be honest, I'm confused by the gap between ideals and reality. The two continued their meal quietly. The cheerful conversations of other customers echoed throughout the restaurant, but only their table was enveloped in a heavy atmosphere. By the way, How are things with Michael? How have things been lately? Jessica changed the subject. Nothing particularly different. We're still getting along well, Emily smiled. He's been busy with a new project lately, and he's been coming home late many days. That must be tough. But being successful is a wonderful thing. Yes. I'm also enjoying my library work and living fulfilling days, Emily spoke brightly, trying to cheer up her sister. Jessica watched her sister's happy appearance while harboring complex emotions. Her feelings of genuinely rejoicing in her beloved sister's happiness mixed with dissatisfaction about her own circumstances. I'm sure something good will happen to me too, someday, Jessica murmured, as if trying to convince herself. Of course, Jessie. You're strong and beautiful and talented. I'm sure a wonderful future awaits you, Emily encouraged her sister from the heart. The two finished brunch and exchanged hugs before leaving the restaurant. Emily felt her sister's thinner body while thinking about what concrete help she could provide. On Tuesday afternoon, Emily was organizing books at the return counter of the library. Autumn sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm light throughout the quiet library. There were few patrons, and it was a peaceful afternoon. Just then, her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Jessica. Emily, this is an emergency. There's something I want you to see. Contact me right away. Emily frowned. Usually Jessica would send messages in a lighter tone. Had some serious problem occurred? Emily immediately replied, "What happened? Are you okay?" A few minutes later, a message with photos arrived from Jessica. "Sis, look at this. I have to tell you something painful." When Emily opened the photo, there was Michael appearing to be intimately dining with a young woman at a restaurant. The two were sitting across from each other, and Michael was leaning forward touching the woman's hand. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s, with long brown hair and elegant clothing. From the angle of the photo, it was clear that the two were in an intimate relationship. Emily's hand trembled for a moment. However, she quickly regained her composure. She recognized this woman. Another message continued to arrive from Jessica. "Sis, this is really painful, but you should know the truth. He seems to be meeting with this woman multiple times. I was shocked too, but a friend happened to witness this and took this photo. Michael's recent late nights are probably because of this." Another photo was also sent. It was a photo of the same woman standing in front of Michael's car. This was taken last week. It's his company's parking lot. "Sis, I felt I had to tell you as your sister." Emily took a deep breath. The woman in the photo was definitely Sarah Johnson. She was a new architect who had joined Michael's construction company 3 months ago, and Emily had met her several times at company parties. She was a bright and intelligent woman, and Michael had also spoken of her, saying he highly valued her talent. However, Emily knew something. What was captured in these photos was not a scene of an affair, but purely a business scene. The restaurant meal was a meeting about a new project that Sarah was in charge of. Michael had told Emily about that day's events in detail last week. The new employee Sarah proposed wonderful ideas, and the client was delighted, he had said. The parking lot photo also had an explanation. While Sarah's car was being repaired, she had asked colleagues for rides. Michael had taken on that role. Emily smiled quietly. It was clear where Jessica had obtained these photos and with what intention she had sent them. And Emily had photos she should send back to Jessica. "Thank you, Jessica. I'll consider divorce because of this," Emily replied calmly. "By the way, do you recognize this?" The first photo Emily sent was taken 3 months ago in the lobby of the downtown Marriott Hotel. It was a clear photo capturing the moment Jessica and Michael were intimately kissing. The two were embracing like lovers, without caring about their surroundings. The second photo showed Jessica getting out of Michael's car late at night on multiple dates. The first photo was from the end of August, the next from mid-September, and the most recent one was taken last week. Every photo clearly showed that their relationship was not temporary. The third was not a photo but a screenshot. It was an image of a message sent to Robert that read, "Mr. Robert, I have important matters to discuss regarding your ex-wife. I also have evidence related to Ethan's upbringing. I would like to meet with you when you have time." The send date and time showed this morning. Emily's cell phone immediately started ringing. It was a call from Jessica. Emily stared at the phone without answering. The phone stopped ringing but immediately started ringing again. Messages then arrived like a torrent. "Sis, answer the phone. Let me explain. How did you know? Since when? This is a misunderstanding. The photos ignore context. What did you send to Robert? Please, let me explain. We need to talk." Emily moved to the library's break room and quietly stared at her cell phone. Her colleague Mary called out with concern. "Emily, are you okay? You look pale." "Yes, I'm fine. Just some family matters," Emily answered with a smile. The cell phone kept ringing. Jessica's calls never stopped. However, Emily didn't answer any of them. Instead, she quietly sent a message to her husband Michael. "Michael, can you come home early tonight? I have something important to discuss." Michael immediately replied, "Of course. Did something happen? I'll tell you the details at home. I love you." Emily put her cell phone on silent mode and returned to work. Messages from Jessica continued to arrive endlessly, but Emily continued to ignore them. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when Emily returned home from the library, Michael's car was already parked in the driveway. He had come home early as promised. When she entered the house, Michael was making coffee in the kitchen. "Emily, welcome home. What happened?" Emily quietly took out her cell phone and showed him the photos Jessica had sent. "Look at this." Michael looked at the screen with a confused expression. "This is a photo of me and Sarah. But this is just a business lunch. I told you about it, didn't I?" "I know," Emily answered quietly. "The problem is the person who sent this photo." Emily revealed Jessica's name and then showed Michael the photos she had been taking. Michael's face turned pale, and he almost dropped his coffee cup. "Emily, this is 3 months, Michael. You continued this with my sister for 3 months," Emily's voice was as cold as ice. "And today, she sent me false evidence accusing you of having an affair. I'm sure her plan was to make us divorce so she could have you all to herself." Michael was speechless. Heavy silence filled the kitchen, with only the ticking of the clock echoing. What broke the silence was Emily's cell phone. Jessica's call rang out again, but Emily continued to ignore it as usual. Michael collapsed into a chair and held his head in both hands. "Emily, Michael started to speak, but Emily raised her hand to stop him. "Don't say anything now. The facts are enough." Messages from Jessica kept arriving on her cell phone. Emily read the text that conveyed her sister's desperation while remaining calm. "Sis, please, it's a misunderstanding. I didn't seduce him. He was the one who. Think about the child. Think about Ethan. Don't say anything to Robert. Please. We're sisters. We're family." Emily looked up from the screen and stared at Michael. "Do you have something you want to say?" Michael looked up. His eyes were red and filled with guilt. "Emily, I'm the worst. I won't make excuses. But this wasn't planned." "Explain." "At first it really was by chance. At the end of July, Jessica contacted me. Her car had broken down and she asked if I could pick her up." Michael continued painfully. "You said you'd be late because of library training, so I went to pick her up." Emily listened silently. At that time, Jessica was crying. Financial problems, things about Ethan, anxiety about the future. I was just trying to comfort her. But that night, Michael choked on his words. Before I knew it, we had crossed the line. And so you continued for 3 months. I was suffering from guilt. But Jessica said she needed me. Financially and emotionally. And I also. Michael lowered his voice. To be honest, I was also intoxicated by the feeling of being needed. Emily's expression didn't change. You never once consulted with me. About our marriage, about your feelings. I didn't want to hurt you. But in the end, you hurt me more deeply. The doorbell rang. Emily looked at the clock. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. The bell continued to ring persistently. It's Jessica, Emily stood up. If we don't answer, she'll give up eventually. However, the sound of the bell didn't stop. Eventually, Jessica's voice could be heard. Emily. Sis. Open up. Let's talk. The voice gradually became louder, loud enough for the neighbors to notice. Emily sighed and headed to the front door. When she opened the door, Jessica was standing there with tears streaming down her face. Her makeup was ruined and her hair was disheveled. Sis, please. Listen to me. There's nothing to talk about, Jessie, Emily answered coldly. I may have done something wrong, but I did it thinking of you. When I found out Michael was having an affair, I thought I should tell you before you got hurt. The affair partner you're talking about is just a business partner. But your relationship with Michael was a real affair. Jessica's face turned pale. How did you know? I'm not stupid, Jessie. I've been suspicious since 3 months ago. So I was gathering evidence. Evidence? Emily took out her cell phone and showed her the photos. Jessica stared at the screen with an astounded expression. But this is. I sent the same photos to Robert. He's meeting with a lawyer tomorrow to apply for custody modification. Jessica's knees buckled. Ethan will be taken away. These are the consequences you brought on yourself. At that moment, another car entered the driveway. It was Robert's car. He got out of the car and walked toward the front door. Jessica, so you were here, Robert's voice was filled with anger. I came rushing over after getting a call from Emily. Jessica turned around. Robert, no. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Robert held printouts of the photos in his hand. Is this also a misunderstanding? An affair that continued for 3 months. We're already divorced. But you're Ethan's mother. And when custody was decided, you promised a stable living environment. Robert raised his voice. Can you call an affair with a married man, especially with your sister's husband, a stable environment? Emily stepped between the two. Could you please have this discussion in an appropriate place rather than in front of my house? It's disturbing the neighbors. Robert nodded. Emily, I'm grateful for your courage. Thank you so much for telling me the truth. I just did what was right. Robert stared at Jessica. Tomorrow, my lawyer will contact you. I'm applying for a custody review. Your actions are not appropriate for a child's upbringing environment. Ethan is my child. Jessica screamed. Ethan is our child. And now, he needs a stable environment, Robert answered calmly. I'll also submit all the evidence about your plan to sabotage your sister's marriage. Jessica looked at Emily with a desperate expression. Sis, please. I have no one else to rely on. You made your own choices, Jessie. Both having a relationship with my husband and trying to deceive me with today's photos. Emily's voice was quiet but filled with determination. Robert returned to his car and urged Jessica along. Come on, Jessica. Tonight might be the last night you spend with Ethan. Jessica went to Robert's car crying. After the car left, Emily returned to the house. Michael was sitting in the living room with his head in his hands. "Emily, what's going to happen to us?" Emily answered quietly, "We're finished too, Michael. Tonight, you'll sleep somewhere else. Tomorrow, I'm going to get my things." "Your things? You're moving out. This house is in your name, isn't it?" "I've already signed a lease for a new apartment." Michael was surprised. "When?" "3 weeks ago. When I was certain about your relationship," Emily smiled. "I'm prepared. Prepared to start a new life." Michael couldn't say anything. He was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had lost. 6 months later, Emily was greeting the spring morning while drinking coffee on the balcony of her new apartment. The one-story apartment in a quiet residential area a little away from downtown wasn't large, but it was bright and clean, and above all, it was her space alone. Her work at the library had become full-time. Her colleagues initially looked at Emily's divorce with sympathetic eyes, but witnessing her positive attitude and passion for work, they now respected her as a reliable senior colleague. Especially the young staff members admired Emily, who had overcome life's difficulties and built a new career, as a truly strong woman. Michael's construction company had suffered a major blow. When the affair scandal became known throughout the local community, customers who valued conservative values canceled their contracts one after another. In particular, the family-owned company that had commissioned the major shopping center construction project canceled the contract, saying they could not do business with a morally problematic manager. Michael was currently forced into a situation where he had to lay off most of his employees. Emily occasionally heard about Michael's current situation. There was talk that he was doing small construction subcontracting in another town. When she imagined his figure fallen from a glorious local prominent businessman, Emily felt complicated emotions. She didn't feel hatred, but she didn't feel sympathy either. She simply accepted the reality that choices always come with consequences. Jessica's situation was even more serious. In the custody trial, the fact of the affair and the planned action to intentionally sabotage her sister's marriage became decisive evidence, and Robert became Ethan's primary custodial parent. Jessica was granted only visiting rights twice a month. Her career as a real estate agent also came to an end. Many of her clients were local residents, but when the scandal spread, she was labeled as an untrustworthy person, and new contracts drastically decreased. Currently, there were rumors that Jessica had moved to the state capital Columbus and was working as a general clerk at a small office. Ethan seemed to be living a more stable life since he started living with Robert. Robert learned housework for his son and sent him to school every morning with a homemade lunch. On weekends, the two would play catch or go to movies, cherishing their father-son time. Emily had happened to see Robert and Ethan on the street, and both looked calm and happy. One Sunday afternoon, Emily was preparing for a book club held at the library. Today's theme was contemporary novels depicting women's independence and growth. Most of the participants were middle-aged and elderly women, many of whom were facing turning points in their lives. When the book club began, one participant raised her hand. "Emily, from your own experience, could you tell us about the mindset when facing life's difficulties?" Emily thought for a moment before answering. "What I learned is that truth sometimes comes with pain, but it's much more valuable than relationships built on lies and deception. And no matter how close a relationship is, it's important to respect the other person and be honest." Another participant asked a question. "When family relationships are broken, how should we deal with it?" "Just because someone is family doesn't mean everything is forgiven," Emily answered quietly. "Love and indulgence are different. Sometimes, even for the sake of those we love, we must make harsh choices. I think that's true love." After the book club, Emily was approached by an elderly woman. "Listening to your story gave me courage. I've been worrying about my relationship with my son and his wife recently, but I've decided to clearly express my feelings." Emily smiled. It's never too late in life. That night, Emily was having dinner alone in the living room of her new apartment. On the table were a new novel she had borrowed from the library and preparation notes for next week's book club. Looking back, the 6 months since that day had been turbulent. However, Emily had no regrets. By revealing the truth, many relationships had been destroyed, but at the same time, she had been freed from a fictitious life built on falsehoods. Outside the window, cherry blossom petals were dancing in the wind. It was the beginning of a new season. Emily thought while opening her book. Perhaps true family doesn't refer to blood relations or legal relationships, but to people bound together by mutual respect, honesty, and trust. And such relationships can be newly built at any age, regardless of age. Emily smiled quietly and began reading the new chapter. Her life had also just begun a new chapter.